We're going to get started. Welcome everybody. I'm just going to hold this up for a few more minutes just so everyone can get all the colors that we need for this particular painting. I did kind of group them together in the easiest way possible for getting the color combinations that we want, but basically we've got 2 yellows, 2 whites, 2 reds, a blue, a green, and a black. You don't have to have them in exactly that combination, but it does help with when we're doing our mixtures to have them right next to each other like that. So now we're just going to get started. Here is the painting that we are going to be doing today, this old oak tree. I tried to capture that sort of ancient sort of look in the trunk of the tree, which is a lot of fun actually when you're trying to paint it, to kind of get that textured kind of gnarly sort of look in the trunk of the tree and the base. Also in the getting the leaves, the clumps of leaves. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge if you haven't done something like this before, but once you get it down, you're going to really love it. It's a lot of fun. I think it helps to kind of picture like a head of broccoli, or even just a piece of broccoli. If you were to break it down into a piece, it really helps to kind of visualize what these tree branches are doing and how we're going to paint them on there, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. But let's first start with the easy stuff and get our background in there. So let's get our sky first. And what I like to do is, I didn't mention the brushes we're going to be using. So today I'm going to be working with my usual 3 brushes: small brush, round, medium brush, round, and large, flat. Because I'm working on a large surface today, I will probably use an even larger flat for my painting, but you don't need to worry about having anything bigger than that for your flat. But this is the flat brush is what we're going to start with for the background. So, and to start with, we're just going to create a horizon line. And the easiest way to do that is find the halfway point of your canvas and then come down another couple of inches from the halfway point. So first I'm going to take that large brush, dip it in the water. Dipping that large brush in the water. And I'm going to start with that white and yellow combination over here. Let's just start with a little bit of yellow. Just dip your brush in a little bit of yellow. And it's okay if some water gets on there. Actually, you kind of want that to happen. Okay, and this is what the color we're going to use to find our halfway point. Our horizon line. So again, for the horizon line, you come about halfway down the canvas and then down another couple of inches. So you want to be below the halfway point on the horizon line. And then just start bringing that yellow paint in there, straight across like that. Straight across. Okay, and then just stretch it out so that it comes on up into the sky. Maybe about halfway up the sky you can stop with this color. So you're going to stretch it out. I'm not really even adding any more paint to it. I'm just kind of stretching out what I have, going back and forth, and getting a nice sunset foundation here. Now, before I allow this color to dry, while it's still wet, I'm going to start working in some of the white. So now I'm going to do a mixture, take a little scoop of yellow and a little scoop of white and blend those two together. And now I'm getting a little bit of a lighter, kind of a creamy yellow color. And I'm going to start bringing that into the sky, right down to the horizon line. Let it blend in with that yellow that I've got. And again, about halfway up my sky. Now, while I've got this color on my brush, I do want to bring it a little bit into the water, but I'm not going to overpower the water with it. So I actually want to water that down a little bit. So just take your brush and just dip it in the water. And so just watering down a little bit of that light yellow. I just added a little bit of water to that light yellow. Just like that, just a little bit of water, just to get it a little bit creamy, easy to, nice smooth blending. And I'm just going to, starting in the center of my water, I'm just going to bring in a little bit of this color, starting in the center, and then getting a little bit wider as it comes down, like that. We gotta have the foundation for the reflection in the water here. So again, starting in the center, but then we're just gonna drag it out a little bit like that. It's not covering everything, just a little hint of that color in there. We're gonna go over it numerous times, but we wanna at least get started. Can everybody see that okay? Okay, good. Just give that a moment. It helps with the creativity. Now we really need this color to be nice and dry up here. So we're gonna not touch this area up here for now. But I think while we're waiting for this all to dry up here, let's bring in some lighter color into our, right on our horizon in the sky. If you look in the original, you kind of see how it just really pops down here, right underneath our tree and right where it hits the water. We've got a real pop of a light yellow here. So I'm going to switch out to a medium-sized brush at this point. So I'm going for a smaller brush, like something like that. And this time I'm going to go into my white paint and just go with the white paint. It's okay if a little bit of yellow gets on it, but I want to just go with the white paint And starting somewhere around the center of my sky, just bring in some nice little brush strokes. It's gonna blend in with that yellow, that's okay. I want a little bit of both. Just bring in a little bit of white in there. And you can kind of use any brush strokes you want here. You can go side to side and get a nice smooth look, or you can go little crisscrosses, whatever feels right to you is gonna look good there. I like to do a little bit of both. Cover all my bases. So kind of right along my horizon, nice and bright in here. This is where our sun is just kind of setting. And a lot of this is going to be covered over by the tree. But no harm in having a foundation. There we go. And we're going to wait to do the water until we have a little bit more painted in there. But for now, just getting that little glow of the sunset at the bottom of the sky. Okay, so like I said, I want to really make sure this is nice and dry, this part, before we go anywhere near the top part of the sky. And the reason being is if you mix blue and yellow together, you're going to get green. And we definitely don't want green going on in our sky, especially where there's a green tree in front of it. So you need to have that contrast of the blues and the purples behind the tree. So we're gonna make sure that's nice and dry before we do anything else. And actually, mine actually feels really dry. Is everybody else's feeling pretty dry? All right, so. Maybe we'll give it a few more minutes. Okay, we'll do a different step instead while we're waiting for that to dry. So to begin with, we're going to go back into our medium brush, sticking with that medium-sized brush and give it a little bit of a rinse. Medium-sized brush, just give it a little bit of a rinse. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is make a little bit of a very, very light purple. So, of course, for purple, just going to mix a little bit of blue and red together, but this purple is going to be mostly blue. So I'm going to come over here to this blue and red combination, take a nice big chunk of blue paint, and set it aside. The first thing I want to do is make a light blue. Okay, so nice big chunk of blue paint, maybe even, let's take about half of that. Nice big chunk of it. The blue. And then I'm going to do, in the center, I'm going to take all that white and bring it on over into the blue and let those two mix together. Get a nice light blue. You can make a good amount of this because we're going to use it in the sky too. So it's just white and blue. I used it all. There we go. White and blue. And get yourself a nice big pile of that light blue to start. So white and blue. A nice really light blue here. Okay. So now make 2 separate piles of this color. So maybe just like that, maybe have 2 separate piles going with this light blue, because one's going to change color. So you want to have 2 piles of that light blue color, and one is going to change a little bit. So you have 2 piles of a light blue color. 1, 2. And one of those piles is going to get a little tiny bit of red in there. And when I say tiny, let's see, I mean like just barely dip your brush, the tip of your brush into that red paint. I mean, just look at that. It's so little. The red really goes a long way, really fast. So just a little bitty bit of red on that brush, and then mix it in. You'll see it just right away will turn more purple, even with that just very little bit of red. So right away, turn more purple, maybe just a tiny bit more. If you want it more purple, go ahead and add more red. It's totally up to you. I like to start with a really soft lavender, and then if I want to add more red, I can. But once all the red's in there, it's hard to get it out. The extraction is very difficult. Well, maybe a tiny bit more red. Let's see what we've got here. So kind of a bit of a lavender color going on there. Everybody can see that. Okay, so this is going to be the color that goes onto the horizon line. So this is in the right at the bottom of the sky. I'm basically going to take this color and underline what I have in the sky. Just give it a little line, but I'm not going to go all the way. So I want to leave a little opening in the center where the sun's going to come through. Let me show you what I mean on the original painting. Can everybody see that? You see how you have a little bit of an opening in the sky where the sun comes through to the water. So we're not going to take our trees and bushes here all the way across. We want to leave a little bit of an opening. So I'm going to go, let's see, let's bring it to right about there. And then I'll skip over a few inches, or maybe just an inch or two. And then I'll keep going. This is right where the water and the sky are meeting. And as of right now, it's just a line, but not for long. Okay, so see where I skipped over right there? Got a nice little entryway for the sunlight to kind of get through there. Now, as I'm putting this on the canvas, I'm realizing this is way too dark. So I'm going to add some more white to that mixture. Lighten it up a bit. There we go. Lightening it up a bit. And it's okay that we have it nice and dark to start because we have two layers here, one darker and one lighter. So now for the moment, what I'm going to do is work my way up just a little bit to get kind of a background tree line right there. So starting right above what we just did, I'm just kind of going to bring up some little brush strokes from the bottom, from the base. Just kind of bring them up, starting in the dark, and just let it, and they're just barely coming over that little line I put there, just barely. But one thing that's going to happen is as they go to the left, they're going to get a little bit higher. And these don't have to look like much of anything. They're going to be very hazy, off in the distance. But what's happening is each time I go to the left and do another layer, it gets a little bit higher. Just a little bit higher each time I go. And what it's going to do is create like an angle, a bit of an angled effect. So again, this doesn't have to be super detailed. This is way, way off in the distance. Could be bushes, it could be trees, be really ugly buildings. So see, notice how it's kind of getting a little bit higher up with each little layer I do. And I'm pushing my brush up. I'm just kind of very light pressure and just kind of working its way up. So something like that. Let me just take this off so I can zoom in on that. So you can see there's really not a lot of detail in there at all. I hope everybody's got some good painting music going on in the background right now. I have discovered that playing music on my end just kind of creates static on your end. So that doesn't work. But I have music in my head right now. Maybe I'll do some humming later. We'll see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. It's essentially the same step, just getting some of that same color and starting at the just barely, just a little dot above the line, just a few little dots where it's kind of, get some little bushes here. But as it comes along, it makes its way out. It's just going to get a little bit higher each time. If you notice, one thing I am doing is leaving a little bit of a space between each little grouping of trees or bushes so you can kind of see some sky between. Just getting a little higher as I go in. A lot of this is going to get covered over. I don't need to worry too much about it, just something there. And this color is nice. And as we get over here, especially, like a lot of this is going to be covered over by the tree. So I'm not going to really worry about getting any detail in there. I'm just going to splash that color in there. Nice and loose. I'm just going to bring this up a little closer for you to see. Again, not a lot of detail in there. Okay, so how's everybody doing? Did we all get kind of a base in here? Some trees off in the distance or bushes? Okay, so now I'm going to switch on over to the large brush. Oh, and I forgot to mention too, if at any point you're questioning a step that you're doing or you're unsure about what I'm doing, feel free to take a picture of your painting and text it on over to me. And I can text you back if I have any suggestions for you, or just address it right here too, whatever you prefer. Or you can just take yourself off mute and ask. Okay, so I am going to keep on going, but I'm going to switch on over to my large flat brush. And for starters, I want to keep on going with that same color that I was using. I'm going to use this as a little bit of a transition color into the sky. So that same purpley lilac-y color. And I'm going to do just wherever your yellow stops in the sky, let's bring in a little layer of this. Wherever the yellow stops in the sky, just bringing in a nice little layer of this purple. Or this lavender. Not fitting it into the whole sky, just right about there. And it's totally up to you. If you want a deeper purple in your sky, you can absolutely add more red to that. One thing I'm going to recommend though here is water this down a bit, stretch it out, because you want it to dry fairly quickly. So if you water it down a bit, it's going to dry much, much faster. And then you really stretch it out into the sky, stretch that paint out. Okay, so once you've got just a little bit of that purpley blue in there, I'm going to rinse off my large brush. Just give it a little rinse in the water, dab it on my napkin to dry it off a bit. And now I'm going to go into the other blue. Remember, we made two separate blues. I'm going to go back into the other blue and maybe add a little bit of water to that as well, so it dries fast. So adding a little bit of water to that blue. It was a blue and white combination, in case you don't have that. So blue and white. This one I'm going to start right at the top of the sky and bring it in right at the tippity top and let it blend right on down to the purple. So a little bit of water, blue and white, starting right at the top. And you can just let it blend in with the purple. It doesn't have to be a clear line. But you do want to stretch it out really good. Don't use too much paint here because you really do want it to dry fast. So water is our friend here. So once you've got that on there, let's just let it dry. Give it a few minutes before we do anything else with it. And I just realized for the recording's sake, I had my recording on pause for that last step. So I'm going to re-demonstrate that step. So all I did with that last step, you're seeing the end result of it here. I apologize for that. But I did a really watery blue, that light blue. So I just took that light blue and just really watered it down good. Got a nice watery version of that light blue. And then just took that watery version of the light blue everywhere else. Cover the rest of the water area. And then let some of that light blue kind of make its way into the yellow. And you can even turn your brush to the side a little bit to create some little streaks of it. But some of it goes into the yellow. I don't want to completely cover over the yellow, but I do want some of this watery blue to kind of create some ripples in it. So you can, of course, cover the area with the wide part of the brush, but then come back in and create some little lines like that. And even kind of on your horizon line, put a little line where the land and the sky meet. Just a little something there. Okay. So if you're watching the recording, you might want to pause it here and go on, do that step. But for everyone else, I'm going to just keep on going on to the next step. So now this part of my sky is nice and dry, which is wonderful because that means we can start bringing in those beautiful cloud formations up there. So I'm going to switch back over to my medium-sized brush and give it a really good rinse. So medium-sized brush, a really good rinse. And now I'm going to go back into my white and yellow combination. So it's a mixture of white and yellow. Now, actually, I'm realizing my water has a little too much blue in there. So I really, really don't want green in my sky. So if your water has blue in it as well, you might want to take a moment and just clean out your water at this point. I'm going to just pause. Okay, so we're back. So again, that medium-sized brush, nice clean water, a mixture of white and yellow. And I would say more white than yellow. So mostly white with just a little bit of yellow. A very light lemony color. Mostly white, a little bit of yellow on that medium-sized brush. Okay, so this is where we're going to start having some fun, making some clouds in here. So let's start not too far away from where our purple and yellow meet. And I'm going to make some little clumps of clouds, but using a dotting sort of motion. So I'm just kind of dotting on the canvas. And let's start with kind of, maybe we'll do a little bit of a little circular poof ball like that. Just like a little, we'll start with a little circle like that. Little poofy circle. It's going to grow from there. One thing in these clouds that I'm going to tell you a little painting trick that you can use frequently. I use it in most paintings that I do, is that you have some shapes that are similar to other shapes in the painting. So for instance, in the cloud formations, we're going to kind of get the feeling, start getting the feeling of the tree branches, or I mean the clumps of leaves. So if you can kind of imagine that, they'll have a very similar feel to them as the clumps of tree leaves. And that creates a really nice composition in the painting when you can kind of have similar shapes throughout the painting here and there, if that makes any sense. So now I've got a little round clump. I'm going to connect maybe another little round clump next to it that maybe it attaches itself, and maybe one more, almost as if you imagine little tree branches maybe. And then once you've got 3 little clumps, you just start kind of letting them blend together a bit. And not all of those, our clouds have to look like that, but similar little clusters look really nice. Now maybe I'll come up into the blue and do something kind of similar. Maybe one little round-ish clump like that. And again, I'm just using a dotting motion with that medium-sized brush. And we'll have another little cluster over here. And maybe a third one over there. And it's okay if you leave little bits of blue in there. And then just kind of drag it down a bit. Okay, so now I want to start connecting and I'm going to keep on going with that one little formation and let it kind of make its way into another one. So now I'm not going to worry so much about getting that similar shape. I'm just going to have fun with it and just kind of let it do some random little clustery things. So see how some fun little shapes are emerging in the sky, and it's just using this sort of motion on the brush. I'm tapping the brush, just tapping it and letting it grow, make its way across the sky. Clouds, you can't overthink them. You just kind of have to start playing with them and see what happens. And the fun thing is usually, even if you don't like what happens, you can turn it into something else that you do like. Right, Anne? Anne has made thousands of clouds in her career as an artist. I'm not even looking what I'm doing. I should probably put that here. So these little clusters of clouds are just kind of growing into each other. Now I don't want to completely get rid of the blues or the purples behind it. I want to have some blue, some purple, but you can have these little connecting cloud formations happening just about anywhere here. Now, once you get over into this area on the right, there's a whole lot of tree going on there. So don't overthink the right-hand side. Maybe a few splashes of cloud here and there, but boy, this is all tree over here. So don't overthink the right side. You put more of your attention onto those clouds on the left. So if you're feeling hesitant about your clouds at this point, like you're getting it on there, but you're not sure if you like what you're seeing, just text me over a picture of what you've got. I can see if I can help you with that. Or just keep playing with it and see what happens. So I'm just going to keep on going. I'm going to bring some clouds up here. And there's no definite shapes, but I am keeping in mind the tree branches and clusters of leaves. This step might take a few minutes. I'm also going to bring in some clouds into the yellow area down here. Some nice fluffy clouds. Same idea. Then you could do the same thing, kind of do your little poof balls that connect to each other, or you could do something different. By now you've probably figured out your cloud formula. Everybody's kind of got their own way of doing clouds, I've noticed. Take it right on down to that tree line. Mm-hmm. And over here, I'm not going to overthink it. Once we have some of that color, we're doing good. Okay, so far, so good. Just gonna pull that in so you can see a little bit closer what we've got going on here. I saw that look. I'm gonna keep it in a close-up version, but feel free to text me. And if you don't have my number, just unmute yourself and let me know. And you're more than welcome to send over a message, or you can even hold up your painting into the camera. So now I just kind of want to show everybody how to get little bits of highlights onto their clouds. So I'm going to go in with some pure white. Well, there's a little yellow in there, and that's okay. But you can either do pure white or a little bit of yellow in your pure white. And just maybe coming towards the tops of your clouds, you can create a little bit of definition towards the top by adding some really pretty little highlights. And it doesn't have to be everywhere. Clouds are funny like that. So especially towards the tops is nice. Giving you a little bit of a white highlight. This is where you can start getting some really fun shapes into your clouds. And try to not be too mechanical with your highlights so it's like perfectly shaped. Feel free to add some elephants and fish. There are some other things we always see in clouds. I see dinosaurs in clouds all the time. There's probably a psychological test out there somewhere. Like what you see, what you usually see in clouds, and what does it mean? So just kind of mainly sticking to the tops, and I'm not really being mathematical about it, of course. I wouldn't know how. Just bringing little highlights in here and there. So you can either use pure white or a little bit of white and yellow together. And I wouldn't even bother with the ones up over by that are going to be hidden behind a tree. They don't really need any highlights. Oh, somebody just sent me a message. That's me. Oh, wow. Karen, that is definitely, Karen, just, can I show everybody? That's pretty amazing. As far as what you see in the cloud formations, I don't know if everybody can see that or not. Of course, Karen, if you don't know Karen, she loves dogs. So it doesn't surprise me that even if it didn't really look like a dog, that she would have seen a dog in the cloud formation. But that really does look like a dog. That's pretty amazing. Cool. I think you need to do a painting of that. I saw an artist once that did all of his paintings were real, real life, what he had seen, but they were various scenes he saw in cloud formations. And I thought that was pretty neat. It's some really beautiful ones. Just some little highlights. And let's just emphasize our horizon a little bit more with some more white. Really get a nice, vibrant highlight here. Okay, so now while we have this really nice highlight on our brush, highlight color on our brush, let's bring some highlights into our water. Now it depends on the middle size brush, medium size brush that you have. But mine, I think, might be a little too big for getting some highlights in there. So I am going to switch over to my small brush. But if your medium brush is really small and has a little point to it, you can stay with that. But for me, for my water highlights, I'm going to switch on over to a small brush and continue with that white with maybe a teeny bit of yellow. I don't know, mostly white. Stick with mostly white. And I'm going to take this right on down to where the water and the sky meet and just start bringing in some little dashes of highlight in here. Little dashes of highlight. Now, keep in mind there is going to be a shadow underneath this layer of the trees. If you look in the painting, see how there's a second layer? We're going to add that in, and then it has a reflection in the water. So let's not put our highlights in there too much. Let's keep them more towards the center and winding off to the left a bit. And I'll show you what I mean. So they're just little lines. Oops. Mostly white. And they're kind of more so making their way off to the left, because we are going to have a little bit of a landmass coming in here. So let's keep them to the left. So see how they're just kind of starting to wander over to the left. And it's okay if some of those lines go into the blue too. That actually looks really nice. In fact, I'm going to do it on purpose. Just like that. So see, it's kind of wandering off to the left. Lines. A nice little highlight. And now once you're about halfway down into the water, you can start bringing your highlights back over to the right a little bit too. We just want to make sure we leave plenty of room for that little land and its shadow. And as we come out further into the water, no need to do as many out this way. Be a little scarcer. If you notice too, I'm going nice and thick with my paint. Here's a little close-up version of the water. Okay. So at this point, we're going to bring in the tree, the root of the tree, the root system, the base, the branches, and we need to do this before we do this area because we need this to dry first. Okay, so let's get started with the tree. For the tree, I'm going to use my medium-sized brush and rinse it off really good. And let me just show you, I just did a little bit of a really fast version of the tree, how it starts at least. So of course, we're going to get a nice deep brown color, and I'll show you how to do that. But if you pay attention to the pattern coming into these branches here, so if you notice, each of these little, so you have a main branch that comes out like that, and then it ends in a grouping of 3. And then you've got 3 coming off of that, and each of them end in a group of 3. Just having that pattern helps with getting clusters of the tree leaves around. It gives it a good foundation for the leaves. So I'm going to demonstrate this in just a minute. But just so you kind of have an idea of where we're going with it, it's just groups of 3s. Keep in mind, groups of 3s. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to use my medium-sized brush. And we're coming over here to this combination over here, the red, yellow, and black. First thing I want to do is mix red and yellow together completely, like all of the red, all of the yellow, and just let those two mix together. It's going to make a nice bright, bright orange, which you don't want to use for the tree. But it's nice to have it. So a nice, mix that red and yellow together. It's probably about half and half. Okay, now leave a little portion of this, the color that it is right now, that nice bright color, just leave a little section of it untouched. Okay, so just pick a little corner of that that doesn't get anything else on it, leave it untouched, And then, but for the rest of it, most of that color, we're gonna take a little dab of black paint and bring it into there. A little dab of black paint. And of course, the black is just gonna totally take over. But it is going to give you a nice deep brown. So make sure you leave a little bit of that bright red by itself, but everything else is gonna get a mixture, a little bit of that black paint in there. Okay. And you can even add a little bit of water to that mixture to make it easier to work with. Water it down just a little bit. Okay, are we ready? Let's get this tree up. Construct the tree. So I'm gonna start with the tree. I'm not gonna get into too much detail in the root system, but I'm gonna start maybe a little more than halfway across to the left. And just start by bringing in a little line down here, just a little one. And then every now and then let that line just kind of get a little bit lumpy. That's the best way I can describe it. It just gets a little bit lumpy, but then it goes back to being a line. And then right about here is where we're going to start moving our way up into our tree. Now this is also going to be kind of lumpy, if that makes any sense. It's not going to be a perfectly straight line. It's going to wiggle a little bit, go in and out a bit, like a little caterpillar. And then just about, oops, we're going to keep going up a bit, and maybe about halfway into this area here, I'm going to start letting this turn into a branch. It's going to start branching out. So it's going to come out to the left. Again, not perfectly straight. Let it kind of wiggle a little bit and move around a little bit. Try to avoid having a perfectly straight line. And maybe we could let it stop for the moment while it gets into once it gets into the sky. Okay. Now I'm going to come back on down here to the rest of my tree and start filling that area in. Just fill it on in, all the way to the bottom. I'm just going to kind of give you a little close-up version of what I've got so far. Now, once we have that branch that kind of reaches out into the sky a little bit, I'm gonna add a tiny bit of water to my mixture so it's easier to get a thinner line. Adding a little bit of water to my mixture makes it easier to get a thinner line. So I want this line to get a little bit thinner as it goes out further into the sky. Okay, and this is where I'm going to start thinking about branching out to the left. Maybe I'll stop right about there. Now remember, I said groups of threes, so at the end I want another one that comes out like that. And then maybe another one that comes out like that. At the moment it looks a bit like a pitchfork, but you get the idea. So this gets thicker as it goes to the base. As it moves to the base, it's thicker. It gets thinner as it goes out into the sky. Okay, adding the water to the mixture really helps, especially at this point. Now I'm gonna come up maybe about here, my tree branch, and get it to kind of make its way up to another little cluster of 3. Now, of course, we have to keep on going up with our tree branch, our tree trunk. So we're gonna, wherever you left off with this, just kind of come on back up like that. You can kind of fill it in if you like. Come up another couple of inches. And then let's do the same thing. We've got another branch making its way out here. Same sort of thing. It's making its way out to the left. This one's going to climb a little bit higher out. Right up until about there. Okay. And again, my groups of 3s are going to come into play. So let's start at the very end and give ourselves a nice little clump of 3. So 1, 2, 3. Again, adding water makes this so much easier to work with. And then I want things to fill out down and through here too. So let's add another little branch off of there. And then again, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm gonna keep on working my way up the painting. Same way I did before, just keep on going up. And then we've got one more branch that comes up right about there. And then this we're just gonna kind of fill in like that. Let's do our 1, 2, 3 here as well. So we've got 1, 2, and then we'll have a nice third one coming off like that. And just kind of filling in. I think this one deserves 3 of its own. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. Okay, so once you've got that basic structure in, you can take your small brush and add a few more groupings of 3 where you feel they need to be. Okay, so for instance, if there's a lot of sky going on in a particular area, you might want to add a smaller branch in there just to break it up a bit and give yourself a little group of 3. So anywhere you're seeing a lot of sky between branches, just go ahead and give yourself some little, I switched to my small brush, but you could continue with your medium if you like. So if you're seeing a lot of sky, maybe even right here, why not do a little one right here? And trees, you can have all kinds of fun with those shapes. Make them, especially old oak trees, they can just be so gnarly. Just have fun with it. You can make some smaller branches kind of coming off these if you want. So it's kind of up to you how many branches you want to have on your tree. Everybody's is different. Okay. So while we've got that small brush in hand, I'm going to give it a little rinse in the water and go back into my red. Remember I said leave a little bit of that orangey red all by itself? So with my small brush, I'm going to bring in some little bits of highlights here. So I'm going to take that orangey red and just bring a little bit of yellow and white into it. Yellow and white. So my orangey red that I had gets a little bit of yellow and white to make a nice sunsetty color. And I'm using my small brush. I don't need a lot of this. I'm just going to bring in a few little highlights. You might want to add a little bit of water. And even add a little bit of the brown too, to just kind of soften your highlight a little bit. Just bring in a little bit of that brown to soften it up a bit. Okay, so once you've got that highlight color, it's really nice, especially along the trunk, to just kind of bring it in a few little dashes along the outer edge. But what you're going to do as you make those dashes, you're going to create some nice little shapes in the tree, like little holes using these highlights. So let's start just bringing it right along the edge, right where the light might be hitting it. But then it's going to make its way over like that and create a little hollow. You see that? Let's bring that right up. Okay. So you're creating some little shapes in there with your highlight. You're working with the shadows that are already in the color that's already in the tree, and just creating some little, like little holes where you might find some woodland creatures living in there. And I'm just going to make a few of those, especially along the edge of my tree. It's totally up to you how many you want. Or if you don't like the look of it, you don't have to have any. And I'm going to keep on going, add a few of those into my trunk, my root system as well. Let's just show that up close. So I'm keeping it mainly towards the top. The cord. Okay. And you can even bring a few of these lines towards the center, but I'm keeping them, the majority, onto the left side where the light might be hitting the tree. Okay, again, you don't have to fill up every inch of the tree with this, but bringing in a few highlights looks really nice, especially along the outer edges. This is how it looks as we're bringing it up into the tree. Just a few little highlights. And I'm not going to go out into my tree to do this, maybe one or two little highlights. But for the most part, that's going to be covered over in leaves anyways. So we don't have to worry about that. Maybe just a few joints where the branches meet, you could get a little tiny highlight there. All right, yeah, not too much, because a lot of this is going to get covered over. But you could always come back in later and add more highlights once you get the basic idea down. Excellent. How's everybody doing with this so far? Doing good? Excellent. Now, one thing we really have to come back and do right away, now that we've got this, our tree branches, and once you've got those highlights, just a few highlights in, let's start letting things dry. We need it to dry really good before we start getting our leaves in there. But let's start right now by bringing in a nice little layer of bushes kind of along the water's edge. Let's get these in here now. Okay, so if you notice, there are two different, these are in two different positions. This one is a little bit lower down, and this one's a little bit higher. This one's right on the horizon line. The one on the left is on the horizon line. The one on the right is below the horizon line. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to start with the one on the right, below the horizon line. So using my medium brush, I'm going to rinse it off really good. I'm gonna go back into the sky blue color that I used. Does everybody still have a little bit of the sky blue color? If not, it was just blue and white. And I'm gonna water that down just a bit. And maybe add a little bit more blue to it. So darken it up just a little bit. So it's the sky blue color, but I'm gonna darken it up just a little bit. Okay, so starting with this one, I'm gonna come down, I would say maybe about, let's see, two inches below the horizon line. Oh, you know what? I need to add more blue. This is too light. I'm gonna add a little bit more blue. Okay, so coming down below, you want it to be darker than the watercolor. A couple inches below the horizon line, I'm gonna create a line, and this is gonna come right on into the center of my water, just right about there. It's just a little line coming in there. And it comes right to the tree's edge. If you go over the tree a little bit, no worries, you could always come back in and fix it. Okay. All right. So let me just do a little close-up of that. Now, once you've got that color on there, at this edge, you're going to just barely touch that color to just kind of mess up the line a little bit, just barely touching it to mess up the line a little bit. Just touching it with the brush to just mess it up a little bit. But as you come to the right, it's going to start getting a little bit higher. We're going to create some little bushes here, or little bits of foliage. And as we come to the right, it's going to just keep getting a little bit higher, making its way up towards these other trees. Now I want to keep my purple in there, but it definitely needs to overlap with the purple a bit. Just like that. And I'm just going to fill it in now. Right on up to where the tree is. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, only this time I sit it right on the horizon line. So it's just another layer right on top of the purple, like that. So it's the same thing. It's that little line, and then you just kind of mess it up a little bit here. But as it gets further to the left, it gets a little bit higher. Okay. And let's just zoom in a little bit on that. See how you can tell there's two different layers? Got the purple in the background, the bluish in the front. Boy, I love those yellow clouds so much. It's gonna be a shame to cover them with leaves. Maybe I'll do an autumn scene instead. Now, while I've got this color on my brush, I want to create my reflection by taking that same brush and leaving a little bit of a tiny little spot where the light can get through, but doing a reverse kind of whatever you have on the top, you want to do the same thing on the bottom, like this. And I'm just kind of dabbing it in there. So whatever you have on the top, you want to have the same thing going on underneath it, little reflection. So this is a mirror image. And we may have to adjust, add a little more yellow in here afterwards, I think. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Mirror image in the water. Whatever you have on the top, same sort of things coming below it in the water. Actually, I'm going to hold off on this because I want to add a little bit of green to it. So I'm going to wait till everybody's working on this side. Give that a moment. Okay, so once you're ready to do the one on the right side, you're going to take that mixture, that light blue, and add a tiny bit of green to it. Add a tiny bit of green into that mixture. Just a little bit of green in there. Switch up the color a bit. And then bring this back on into what you did here. So bring it into almost creating another layer with a little bit of green in it. And then that gets the reflection in the water. Okay. Let me just do this in. Can everybody see that? Okay, so now I'm going to rinse off that medium-sized brush. You might need a little bit more blue for this next step. Use a good amount of blue. So I'm rinsing off the brush, the medium-sized brush. And I'm going to do a combination of mostly blue with a little bit of green. So mostly blue with a little bit of green. And just really fill up that medium-sized brush. Mostly blue, a little bit of green. And this is where we're going to start working on our groups of 3, get the basic foundations for our leaves. So let's start right over here, our first branch. So each of those branches is going to, I'm using the same dotting motion that I've been using to create almost like little poof balls around each of those branches, and also coming over the branch as well. We don't want to leave your branch without some leaves on it. Okay, it's creating some little poof balls around each of those branches. And what's going to happen is they're going to bump into each other, and that is great. That is exactly what you want to happen. You see where this kind of is starting to look a little bit like the cloud formations? And we'll do this one as well. Okay, this is where we start thinking broccoli. Can everybody see that? Okay, so to start with, I'm just going to fill up all of my tree branches just like that. Same process. This is a pretty quick little process you can do. Anywhere you're seeing your branches, What a nice little clumping of broccoli. And there's going to be a lot of overlapping branches. That's good. You want that. You want your leaves to go over some of those big branches too, for sure. I'm sorry, this painting is going a little bit longer than my usual ones, but there's a lot of steps to this painting. You guys are all doing great. Now, once you've got that kind of base of broccoli around your tree, and try to have some of your some of your leaves sticking out a little bit further than others. Don't have them all perfectly rounded. So once you've got that down, try to fill in a few areas over the branches where you're just going to have to imagine that there's branches there. And you want to cover over some more, a good amount of the sky area. I'm kind of using that same principle of groupings of three. I'm going to cover over some more of the sky area and some more of the branches. So clusters of three if you can. Especially up here. Really fill that in good. Towards the top. Okay. So I'm going to just get this a little bit closer. Let's see where we're at. So everybody's kind of leaning in this direction, or going off into an entirely different one. That's okay too. Now I know there's a lot of little steps in this painting, so don't feel like you have to do this part. It's not necessary to the painting, but if you wanted to add another layer into your little bushes down here, you could use this darker blue-green to just create a third layer if you want it. If you like what you have, don't even bother with this. But if you want to add a third little batch in here, you totally can. A batch of bushes. But again, not necessary. Kind of a fun little extra credit. Yeah, it's just because we have the color on the brush. Why not? Okay, so for the highlights, we're gonna rinse off that brush. Give it a good rinse. Medium brush, give it a good rinse. This time I'm gonna do a combination of yellow, white, and green. So again, that's yellow, white, and green. Yellow, white, and green. And you should be fine as long as you have some combination of those three colors in there. It can be a little more on the yellow side, a little more on the green side. You know, it's everybody's painting is going to look a little different from here. Okay, so yellow, white, and green. It's a very messy palette. Okay, so with the highlights, at least to start, I want to come towards the outer edges of those little clusters and give a nice little layer. Maybe even go out just a bit further from what's already there. Just giving it a little, almost like a glow around the outside, so it stays nice and dark on the center, but it gets a little bit of a glow of this highlight around the outer edge. And then just a few dots of it go towards the center, just to kind of bring it in, just a few dots. But mostly, this is going to stay on the outer edge of my clusters. Okay. And then maybe one or two little dashes on the inside. So everywhere where I've got a little cluster, and remember, this can go right over branches. Don't be afraid of going over branches. This will look right if you go over branches for sure. So mostly towards the outer edge, and then just a few dots towards the center. And if you want to, you can even add a little extra white to a few of your branches, lighten up a few spots if you want to. You may love what you have and say, perfect as is, or you could come in and add little bits of light here and there. This may take a step back at some point to see what's going on. At this point, I'm going to add my signature. My painting, the lower right corner. And I'm just using my little brush and watering down the highlight color in the tree. And that is our beautiful oak tree painting. And I'm going to stop the recording here.